Hello, thank you for joining us today. I'm Laura Kunkel, America in Bloom's Executive Director. America in Bloom has been around for almost 25 years. We envision communities across the country as welcoming and vibrant places to live, work, and play, benefiting from colorful plants and trees, enjoying clean environments, celebrating heritage, and planting pride through volunteerism. Through our programs, grant opportunities, online resources, and the sharing of best ideas from towns and cities across the country, we empower communities to beautify and improve the overall quality of life. Today's webinar is an example of one of the ways that America in Bloom shares information to help communities become more beautiful, more vibrant, more sustainable. You can learn more about America in Bloom by visiting our website, americainbloom.org. But we can't do our programming without the generous support of our sponsors. Today's webinar is sponsored by Proven Winners. Proven Winners searches the world to bring you vibrant flowering annuals, perennials, and shrubs that deliver the most beautiful garden performance. You can learn more about them by visiting their website at provenwinners.com. All right, a quick housekeeping note. If you have questions during the webinar, please put them in the Q&A section of your Zoom toolbar. We'll answer questions at the end. For today's webinar, we are honored to have Castle Rock, Washington beautification cheerleaders Nancy Chennault and Julia Collins. Today, we get to tap into their years of hands-on experience and community-driven passion. Working together for 14 years, Nancy and Julia have spearheaded impactful beautification projects in Castle Rock. They've transformed public spaces into thriving hubs of color and connection. Their expertise in engaging volunteers, collaborating with local businesses, getting youth involved, and overcoming challenges make them the perfect guides for today's webinar. We're grateful to Nancy and Julia for being here with us today. Take it away.
Hello, I'm Julia Collins, and we are going to present about our basket program today. So we just want to share first kind of who's all involved. We have our Castle Rock Blooms, then that's a volunteer base. We have Castle Rock Schools and the FFA at the high school, the City of Castle Rock, American in Bloom, and then the Castle Rock Community Development Alliance. We can't do it without the partnership of everybody, and it takes all of us.
And I'm Nancy Chennault, and I am the volunteer coordinator for Castle Rock Blooms. We thought that it wouldn't be a bad idea to kind of give you an idea of how our basket program started. We want to make it something that cities and communities, volunteer groups can use so that it's a program that you can grow with. As all things, they don't start, we started small, I guess is the best thing to say. And we started our collaboration with the Castle Rock High School in 2011 when we planted a display of Vista bubblegum in an island bed right at the entrance to Castle Rock. Castle Rock Blooms was founded and began in 2012 as a partnership with Castle Rock Chamber Cleanup Day. From that spun off into Castle Rock Blooms. 2012, the city enrolled into the American in Bloom program. And then 2014, Blooms became a committee within the nonprofit Castle Rock Community Development Alliance, which has been a great way for fundraising, being part of that nonprofit. The collaboration with the school district began that spring of 2011, and Mayor Paul Hellenberg had said, there's a young ag teacher at the high school who might be able to have some volunteers to help you with your beginnings of your Bloom program. So we actually started with garland making in the fall of 2010 when I was introduced to Julia. And then I went to her and I said, do you have a couple of students that could help me plant those bubblegum petunias on those islands? And she gave me two great volunteer recruits, and that was the beginning of our volunteer program. In 2012, with the American in Bloom program and a renovation of downtown city streets, which included basket brackets, we knew that we were going to grow some city baskets for Castle Rock. Those basket brackets were spec'd at 3 gallon, knowing that there was no way a 3-gallon pot could be supported throughout the summer, represented here by the 14-inch Cordova pots, which we ended up using that first year. And we did do a special hanging for 10-gallon pots with some banner poles where we were able to have some custom baskets made. Those baskets were grown at the high school in the heated space. That was a collaborative effort there, but they had to finish in my driveway because the high school only had the one greenhouse at that point. And so we finished those 14-inch Cordovas sitting on pots in my driveway and hung them in the city. And they were nice baskets. It's just that 14-inch does not represent a really big city basket. You can see on the basket hangers that it does not have the crossbar that gives them strength, but we tested those through the winter with some 10-pound free weights, and we're able to see that they could support a large basket. And from here on out, any downtown street renovations that added lampposts with basket brackets included that cross piece to make it a sturdier pot. So the next thing we did was we looked for a way to have a basket that would be able to support downtown summer heat and watering. And through Proven Winners, we were introduced to Carl Eckert and his H2O Labor Savers. Carl is also a sponsor of American in Bloom, so that was a nice fit to begin. And he gave us 12 baskets to trial, which we did right alongside the 10-gallon. And those baskets were monitored by Castle Rock Public Works, who was doing the watering. And in true Dave Vorse director fashion, he has everybody document every single hour they spend doing anything. And he came up with 42% savings of using the water saver baskets over a 10-gallon. And that is exactly what Eckert talks about, a 40% savings on labor. So they're aptly named, those labor savers. So in 2015, the city invested in more baskets, and they are now part and began then as part of the city budget. The city determined that the benefits of hanging beautiful baskets downtown was a good economic boost. It brought visitors to town. It made people have pride in their community. And so from the very beginning, the Castle Rock city budget has included the money for the baskets, the materials that go into the baskets, as well as the maintenance of the baskets in the summer. And you can see in 2015, we did 60. And for the last 3 years, including this year of 2025, we'll do 220 of those baskets.
So in 2013, when we added more of the labor savers, trialed them, we did both types of baskets you can see in this picture. And that's really when volunteers started working with students in planting the city baskets. We quickly realized that we did not have enough space here at the high school to partner. And the Blooms team looked into grants, and they found a grant through the Cowlitz County Health Foundation. We received it, and we were able to build this cold frame. Volunteers were the primary labor to put this greenhouse up. So it's a cold frame, no heat, no cooling, and it works perfect to grow our baskets in. Here's the finished product. Now the students do take more responsibility in the maintenance of it and helping with any repairs or recovers of the poly. But in the beginning, the volunteers constructed it for us. At first, we would mix soil ourselves. And we kind of chuckle because it was a huge process, very labor intensive and not very sustainable for us. So students here are mixing with our basket mix, which is in the white totes on the left, and then adding bags of potting soil to add more moisture retention. So we're mixing with a cement mixer there, and then filling our labor saver inserts. We knew that we could not sustain that between volunteers, and those were really great students who I could put to work on any project, but we needed to be more efficient with our time. So we asked our the company that we buy our soil from, hey, can we trial 2 different soil mixes? They gave us 2. We trialed them throughout the summer, kept track, and we chose basket soil mix number 1. It added more water retention for our baskets. That way we didn't have to water as much, better for our plants, and saved us a lot of time. So here's our basket mix. It just has more of the coconut fiber in it to help hold that water.
The nutritional program that we were able to use at the high school was somewhat lacking in nutrient because at that point, no chemical type fertilizers could be used within the school grounds. So I would mix up concentrates of my Technogrow 2010 or 2510 or my 1717 and 17 and bring it in on the weekends and make sure everything got some fertility. Thankfully, we were blessed to have the connection with Ball Flora Plant when they were representing Nature Source Plant Food, which is a totally natural plant food. We now use the professional 1043 exclusively on everything in town, everything that is used and planted at the high school and grown for their sale program. It's made of seed extracts. It's totally natural. The students can use it. We can mix it without having to worry about anything being chemical. As always, we trial things. We make sure that we don't just jump into something new because somebody says it's the next best thing. We trialed 10 baskets that were Nature Source only that year. And remember, these are the years when we only did about 50 or 60 baskets. And then the rest of the baskets were traditional, which we top dressed with Osmocote and an organic 444. We monitored those all summer, and we found that what we had was a basket that was actually stronger with the Nature Source because they have very short internodes and a huge bud production, and then also more tolerant of drought. And we got away from the real leggy, high nitrogen growth that can be somewhat susceptible to insect infestations and things like that. So we've been happy with Nature Source ever since. And the 2 retailers in town that also sell it because the public demands the Nature Source plant food because they want to know what we fertilize our baskets with. Brings it up to September, which is the beginning of our calendar year. Now, if you're beginning your program now, you need to be aware that we start our actual planning in September. So it doesn't mean you can't do baskets for 2025. It just means it's going to change a little bit. And Julia will talk to you about that and how it would fit once you see where we start with our growing program. But in September is evaluation time. How did plants grow? How did the combinations grow? Did they do what we wanted them to do? And so we start the process of basically we ask for public input on our Facebook page. We have the Blooms team that is involved, the Public Works Department, which is doing the watering in the summertime. Everybody's involved with input for the next year's baskets. This is a combination we did in 2024. And so that combination is put together and then it's evaluated, of course, of its location. You can see that it's on Front Avenue Northwest, and we did 50, which included Front Avenue basket brackets plus 6. We always have a little bit of an overrun. You don't want to have exactly what you need, or you're going to maybe have one that goes down. It's a perishable product after all. We evaluated that in September, and you'll see that with our planting chart of 4 each of Proven Winner, Super Tunia, Lovey Dovey, and the Hoopla Vivid Orchid, that Vivid Orchid did not stand up to the vigor of the Lovey Dovey. And we did put 1 Vista Jazzberry in there because it has been so vigorous in our other baskets, but it did not raise up out of the top and mingle with things like we thought we would. So we learn things every day. And as we begin that planning process and putting things together, we take those into account, plus introducing some new ideas from the public.
So in October, when we start looking at new plant colors and we have our new recipes, we then have to look at our calculations for our order. So we figure out what we need per variety, per vigor. We're looking at how many trays are in a box. And for us, through Proven Winner, it's 8 trays per box. And then we look at quantities and adjust them if needed to make sure that we have extras, little bit of extra, but that all combinations can be covered. We are ordering our Super Tunias from Proven Winners in cell liners of 104 through 4-star greenhouses. And we are getting them delivered the first week of February, which is week 6. So they are here, they've been planted, and we try to have our plants ordered into Proven Winners by November 1st. That way we can get the colors that we want, the quantity that we need. So here they are delivered. Those are 3 former students. They've all graduated. Week 6, they're bringing them into the greenhouse. The other thing that we're doing earlier on is ordering our soil. So that is mid-November, hopefully, ordering our soil. And that is a joint order between Blooms, the city, and Castle Rock High School so that we can share freight. The other things that we do a joint freight on would be our nature source. So actually the high school, the city, and then our 2 retail businesses and another greenhouse, we all share freight on that to help keep costs down. So thinking creatively to get what you need, but not pay as much sometimes. So then we unbox them, we check them out. They come into the heated house. So this is the first week of February. And we start also looking at what else we need for our labor saver baskets. So our extra wicks or our new wicks and our extra plugs are ordered mid-January. So we're always working quite a few months in advance to make sure we have what we need. So these are our Proven Winner plants in the 104 cell trays. They get planted into jumbo 606 trays. This enables us to fit all the plants into the heated house. It's a little bit bigger than a 2-inch pot. So we can then make sure that our plants have enough root growth before we put them into the large basket later. It saves space for us, and they can still get some heat. If you have not ordered plants yet and you are wanting to do baskets this year for 2025, you're gonna want to purchase plants that are in a 2-inch pot to a 4.5-inch pot that are finished. So kind of like the product behind us, if you can see it at all. That way they are established, they have a root system, and when you go to put them in that basket, they're going to be more successful.
Yeah, it's a little bit late to start from the liners
Yeah.
for the baskets for 2025.
So here's a picture of our volunteers. This year, the students planted all of the city basket plants, and it kind of just, when they come in, who's available, and if the weather is great outside, then Bloom's team is in town doing things. But they all get planted with a tag into each cell pack. Then, when those plants are about 4 weeks old, so we're coming up on that, we are going to trim all of them. This creates a more compact plant. We don't want spiders, I call them, to the students. So a more compact plant. And then we also tag each plant. So each cell gets a tag, and that comes in to be very helpful later on when we are planting.
From the minute they come into the greenhouse and get planted, they are fertilized when they're needed with Nature Source at 500 parts per million. We keep them well fed. as Julia will illustrate through the rest of the growing program.
So our next step is making sure that this greenhouse number 2, which was the one that I showed you through the grant, is sanitized and prepped and ready to go. So it's a preventative maintenance or measure to make sure that we don't have anything that's going to harm our plants. This particular one is an insecticide, a viricide, a miticide, a bactericide, and a fungicide. So it's covering a wide variety of things that could be a problem. When these plants are about 6 weeks old for us, which is going to be mid-March, we move them into the cold frame. We stick them onto these pallets, and you can see now that each plant has its own tag. Very organized. And
No surprises.
yeah, no, we don't want color surprises. So then the next step, and this is a few weeks before we are planting into these baskets, we sanitize the inserts. So they get returned to us clean, but then we sanitize to make sure that we've gotten anything extra that we don't want out.
And they just use the sanitizing wipes. It makes it easy for the students to use a wipe per basket. And then it makes sure that they're not spreading a sanitizer all over the place.
Then we begin filling them with soil. And we start staging into house 2, which is where we plant the baskets. So here is our setup. We have different tables, we have different stations, and that way our Blooms team volunteers can work with a few students. It's probably about 3 students to 1 volunteer when we are planting. And that is around the 3rd week of March. We look at a few things. We look at weather. We look at the high school's schedule to make sure that it works for our students. And then we also make sure that the Blooms team doesn't have anything busy going on so that we can all help. So here's a Blooms team member working with students. And then all of the groups will have a recipe, like that piece of paper on the table in the middle. So the students know what color to grab. That's why the tags are so important, to have each plant with a tag. A lot of petunias look the same when they're not flowering. So it's important for our color recipes that they're labeled. So when the students plant, all the tags end up in one spot within that insert, within that basket. So we also know as we're watering what's doing well, what's not, and we can manage them. So in this picture, these students were putting the tags right next to the plant to make sure that they had their recipe correct. So the students take a lot of ownership into it to make sure it's right. With our extras, we let some of our students pick their own colors and variety, different combinations. In our greenhouse class, we talk about the color theories. We talk about what looks good together, what grows well together. And so these students have already made 12-inch baskets for the plant sale and felt very comfortable and super excited to plant city baskets in different combinations. Here we are in greenhouse 2, and we have planted all the baskets. Along the sides of the greenhouse are the plants for the high school FFA plant sale. So we share this space for a little bit. Once they're done, their first watering is just a little bit. We call it just a kiss. So we don't want to flood the plants out. We don't want to drown them out. We just give them a light watering for their first time. And we do all of our watering by hand. We don't have any drip irrigation throughout any of we actually have 4 greenhouses here at the high school. Each plant or each basket gets the water that they need. We found that when we don't pay attention to each basket or each plant, it can cause aphids to come in real quick because we're overwatering. Aphids are the most, I'd say, most common in our greenhouse, but other insects can come in as well.
This is kind of a Nancy thing because I feel that you begin to develop an intimate relationship with every basket, every plant that you grow by being able to look at it on a regular basis. It's like walking through your garden and seeing how plants are doing. You want to do that regularly too. When we walk through the greenhouses by watering individually, we're able to keep track, as Julia said, of any issues that might pop up.
So in this picture, we can see some soil is lighter, so it's drier, and some is darker, it's wetter. Those dark ones we won't water on this particular day.
That's right.
So the plants just keep growing from April to mid-May. We are looking at weather. We're looking at temperatures. And at this point now, we have bumped our fertilization up to 600 parts per million to give them a little bit extra. What we can do, often we've had really cloudy springs, and if we need to, and they don't look as big as we need to by the time May rolls around, we can bump up our fertilizer to 800 parts per million. But again, we're monitoring the weather, we're looking at that, and then watering when needed. So part of monitoring, like we said, we're looking at our temperatures. We can have snow sometimes in April, and some cold temperatures. So the temperatures that we're looking for are 32 degrees or below. If we're gonna hit that freezing point outside, we cover our plants.
And we use a Pro 70 insulate, which will help keep that temperature under that fabric about 8 to 9 degrees warmer than ambient air temperature.
It takes about 2 people for this greenhouse to cover, and then pull back. And Nancy or I we continue to watch the weather. We talk about the weather a lot.
We only had to cover one night in 2024, and it was in April. So you just never know.
Around the first week of May, it kind of depends on when our plant sale is, we space and trim the baskets. So like I said before, we share the greenhouse space with some plants for the plant sale. When the sale is over, the baskets get trimmed around the edge. We do not trim our potato vine though, if that is in a combination. So we're only trimming our petunias. And then the baskets get spaced out to give them a little bit more room to grow. So they've been trimmed and now are starting to grow again, but there are spots in there, and now we can see that they are from edge to edge of the greenhouse.
So what you'll see as they begin to grow is that our space in between the baskets begins to disappear. And it gets to be a challenge at times to tiptoe through to water. This is around that 2 weeks after they were trimmed, and you'll see again walking through individually watering, and it is time consuming, but it's a labor of love. Being able to watch them, check out your combos, see how they're doing. One thing that we do, and this was recommended by Castle Rock Public Works not too far into this program, and they said lay them into the greenhouse, block them into the greenhouse in the opposite order that we hang them. So the first ones out would be Cowlett Street, because that's the main business thoroughfare in downtown Castle Rock, and they want to get that done early. So they're the first ones out. And so by their hanging schedule is how those baskets are laid out in the greenhouse. We lose a little bit in the spacing just because we can't do the straight rows that you saw earlier, but that's what they prefer, is that we're able to get those baskets out of there without having to trip over other baskets to get to what they're hanging at that time. By mid-May, you can begin to see the combination colors develop. You can also see that the space is very limited, and we end up going from the sides sometimes with the sides rolled up in order to water and be able to get them ready for that third week in May, which is basket hanging week. Generally will happen the week before Memorial Day, or it'll happen the week after Memorial Day. Again, it all depends on the weather. And we just want to have them ready by the 3rd week in May. At that point, the city comes with their trailers, with their rollbacks, with their trucks, and they begin to set out the reservoirs, which the baskets are put into. Public Works loads them out, gets them into those inserts, pull the wicks down, because the wicks will actually grow down into the fabric. In the early days, we thought we put them up on pots, just like you do with a 10-gallon. Well, that webbing on the bottom with the wicks is meant to basically develop a root system. So when these are spaced, we see roots coming through that webbed bottom and into the wicks. When we get ready to hang them, we see even more roots. And it is those roots that are going to be sustaining that basket and getting it growing. They go downtown, they get wires put on, and then they get hung, and then the plug gets put in the bottom so that it has water in the reservoir. Public Works takes a lot of pride in the baskets. Basket hanging day, somebody said it should be a Castle Rock holiday because everybody waits and anticipates, and they're so happy when they see them get hung and go up and see the lift truck with the team out there taking the baskets to the staging area by the brackets and being able to get them hung. This is probably one of the most gratifying pictures greenhouse growers will see. Julie and I celebrate the empty greenhouse because then we know that it has become the responsibility of somebody else besides us. To the left, you see the red and white baskets that the high school grows for the for the school district buildings. So the school district buildings have the same baskets in the colors of the high school and the school district around town. So that's what you see there on the left-hand side. The baskets are hung and then immediately filled with nature source fertilizer. That reservoir in those H2O labor savers holds 2.5 gallons. So we want to make sure that 2.5 gallons has fertilizer in it, because it might be, depending on the weather, and of course the size of the basket is smaller, they may not need to be refilled for quite some time. So when we first hang them, they look a little scraggly. You can see the plugs are in the bottom. They've kind of taken not a hit. Everybody handles them carefully, but the wires are put on, the baskets are transported. But in 2 weeks, you begin to really see what these baskets are able to do and how they're going to perform. At 4 weeks, they're covering the labor saver basket totally, and that's a time for celebration because they're right on track. The people that visit and the people that look forward to the baskets, they like to see them grow. We worried at first that they were smaller. Some cities will hang big, succulent, long-hanging baskets right away. But our community appreciates being able to be part of that process and watch them grow. The maintenance schedule for the city is a watering schedule of Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that reservoir is monitored by a very astute young crew that is hired by the city. There's 2 watering trucks, 2 part-time folks hired that may be a high school graduate, might be a young college student, but they come on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, fertilize with Nature Source on Wednesdays. So they're both there running 2 trucks, and they have gotten really good at being able to tell, depending on what side of the street. This is the other benefit of having hands-on looking at each basket. They know which ones are going to take more fertilizer or more water. They know which ones are going to dry quickly in a windy area or a super sunny area. So they have gotten very good at being able to keep water overflow and fertilizer waste from dripping all over the place out of those baskets. There's a young lady that started 7 years ago and now has a permanent position with Public Works in water management. And she started out as one of the summer watering students. So at 9 weeks, you begin to really see our combinations, and you know why we have committed to the diversity and the quality of plant material with proven winners. Our combinations, we do 5. We do 5 different areas of town where each area has exactly the same basket. This was on Cowlett Street last year, which was the picture of the basket that you saw at 2 weeks. So you see at 9 weeks, it's beginning to really thrive, and the potato vine is beginning to pop out. That's something that always takes a while in our climate with the cooler nights. Potato vine isn't necessarily a happy camper until about the middle of August, even sometimes the 1st of September. But eventually it makes a good show. but this is one of the combos. There's a red and white combo that was up on Spirit Lake Highway on the way to Mount St. Helens. You've seen the lovey-dovey hoopla vivid orchid combination, which we evaluated to see how it was going to be growing together. And that's on Front Avenue Northwest. And then and then on Doherty on the east side, we did a persimmon, really red saffron finch with one white Vista snowdrift. And you can see where persimmon, Supertunia persimmon, really took the lead on this particular combination. So again, the evaluation process happens all the time. And this is what we call our experimental basket. We threw the Vivid Orchid in there with Royal Velvet, Supertunia. We do those in a limited number and just try something that we haven't tried before. And so that's what we call our experimental basket. This is a picture of what we call the most photographed corner in town. People stop, take pictures with the baskets. They have a chance to walk down the street and see all the displays of colors. And so they have been an attraction not only for the businesses to be able to take pride in what their city looks like, and therefore, have visitors come and actually shop their stores, and folks that go to Mount St. Helens will take a trip down into Castle Rock and spend some time down in Castle Rock as well. Just as a note, economically, our empty storefront rate has gone from a high of almost 40% in 2010. And as of today, we have one empty storefront that's available for rent. So it's down to less than 1% with 110 different businesses in our small town. Entrance to town, as people come in, this is what they'll see. And the amount of comments we get from visitors, they bring family. They're constantly making comments on our Facebook page about how they appreciate what the city baskets do. And we appreciate the fact that the city of Castle Rock has actually supported that program all these years and realized the validity of having the beautification of the city baskets in Castle Rock. Then we're back around to September, and it's time, and this is last September, and it's time to begin that evaluation process once again.
Floral impact is one of the American Bloom criteria, and it is the criteria through American Bloom that I am most involved with. It is also, I think, the one that has impacted our city the most. So on one of our streets, we didn't have our light posts, we didn't have our ability to hang yet. And so these were extra baskets, the picture on the right. We are now expected to put baskets there by our city. So
they were extras.
They were
extras along
extras,
this side.
but now they want them there all the time. So floral impact really has changed our community since joining American in Bloom. And part of that change, it takes a lot of different people. So here's representation of the different kind of groups or people that have helped with our whole process and our whole change. So from left to right, we're going to go, those are the two advisors that came last year, and taking that input that they have and figuring out kind of what works for us and looking at their input really helps the whole group in Castle Rock see how we can make ourselves better. The third person, I represent our schools. It's not just the high school. Our other schools are getting involved in different things with planting and changing our town. And then we have Dave Vorst, and he represents part of our public works. He really sees and is part of the vision with the blooms. And if you don't have your city involved with you and seeing the vision, it makes it difficult. But Dave really cares about our town. He's lived here, I think, maybe
almost his whole life.
Maybe his whole life.
Castle Rock High School graduate.
That's
right.
So beautifying the town is something that he's invested in. The next two people, Nancy is one of them, represent our volunteers. Without our volunteers, we cannot do what we do.
The old generation and the new generation.
Yes. So we're constantly welcoming new volunteers in, new ideas, and along with that, teaching more people about how to grow plants. Then the next two gentlemen are Public Works, and they are just as invested as our volunteers.
Right.
It's not just Dave telling them what to do. They're invested in the plants. They're looking at them throughout the summer. They know what the plants need, and really they seem willing to help with whatever we're doing. And then the last gentleman is from Proven Winners, and the industry is a vital piece to have involved with your community. I think it's super important because I'm trying to teach my students, well, here are industries or businesses you can go work for, different things, but also having that expertise for our city, those resources is extremely helpful. Proven Winners website has a lot of resources, but you can also email, call, and they will help. They're willing to give that advice or help when needed. So
The gentleman that was able to attend the symposium last fall is Josh Miller, who represents the landscape end of Proven Winners with the Signature City and the Signature Garden. And Castle Rock has a Proven Winner Signature Garden since 2022, but we were honored to be the very first Signature City designation for Proven Winners since 2018. And as far as I know, we're still the only Proven Winner Signature City in the nation. It's a commitment to the quality of plant material with shrubs, perennials, as well as the annual flowers for the floral impact. But we were really happy to get introduced to Josh Miller at that symposium.
So it takes all of us, it takes a really large group, and just kind of being committed to improving your town. So the baskets are taken down within the first few weeks of October. Part of the reason is Dave Vorse says, don't take them down until after symposium in case we get
right.
an award.
And maybe
then,
somebody will want to come take a picture.
then maybe the newspaper will come take a picture. But also our Septembers have been wonderful weather.
Yeah, that's right.
And they're still growing wonderfully. So we don't take them down until November. And then our process is restarted as far as the planting side. Baskets are cleaned out. We save the wires. We save the parts to the basket, and they get cleaned out and then brought back to the high school.
Yeah. And as Julia said, it takes everybody. Kind of our little bit of a mantra we use with Castle Rock Blooms is that it takes many hands make light work. The more that are involved, the better. And we see that personified in Castle Rock with all of the different entities that are working together to make this program work. The other thing that we say with our volunteers is just come when you can for as long as you can. We do this because we love it. You're not committed to spending hours and hours or any particular time. Our email list is long and they get a to-do, not a to-do, excuse me, but a project list of what's available. I call them volunteer opportunities. And anytime that they can come and help out. And Julia is the same with the high school. So you can kind of see our resources that we have that you're more than welcome to take a look at and be able to see. There's not, oh, my bad. There's not three zeros in www.castlerockblooms.com. It's only one, or excuse me, two. So I'll have to correct that. Sorry, I just realized that. So do take advantage of some of the social media. We're able to get some Instagram things going thanks to Sharisha this year. So we try to document everything that we do. So again, everybody working together toward a common goal, pointed in the same direction is what makes this work. So we like to thank you very much for joining us today. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And that has been the tagline, the quote for Castle Rock Community Development Alliance since 2012. And so we have adopted that as a definite thing that we can use with Castle Rock Blooms.
Thank you for listening. If if you have questions, we have our emails next and you can contact us through email anytime. And I just want to leave you with, don't underestimate the contributions of your youngest volunteers. These happened to be my 3 children a few years ago, but our youth do want to be involved. They can be involved. When you think kids can't do something, they can. And they get very excited to help, and the sense of pride that it builds in them from the projects that they complete, but also the sense of pride in their community. I strongly encourage you to get those youth involved.
Yes, and it just as a note, the young man filling the soil with the shovel is Grady. He loves taking cuttings. He has a couple of plants that are his that he will do the cuttings of the plants for that will be for sale at the sale, for plant sale for FFA. And then the young girls, the twin girls, they are super trimmers.
Yes.
You have overgrown trays that need to have a haircut. Really, they will do a tremendous job. So definitely, as Julia said, never underestimate the commitment and the power of the youngest of the young. So there's our contact information. Don't hesitate to email either one of us if you have questions that go beyond this webinar today. And thank you again, American and Bloom, for asking us to share.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Julia and Nancy. This is Laura back at the America and Bloom office. I'm going to jump in. We have a lot of questions, so we're going to go rapid fire on this. Try to be brief with your answers if possible, just because of time. I do want to also acknowledge we have people from around the globe participating today, so thank you so much. These are going to be in some just sort of chaotic order, so here we go. All right. Here we go. Is there a commitment from businesses along the streets? If so, what is it? And again, brief if possible.
Yep, just really quick, there will be a webinar in the fall that deals with Castle Rock containers. Those are business sponsored containers, and that's where the businesses contribute. The chamber also contributes 50% of the enrollment fee for American and Bloom, along with 50% from the city.
All right, what do you do to dispose of the plants at the October-November basket removal time?
Go ahead.
The city takes them down and puts them in their compost pile.
Mayor Paul makes great soil. He's got a great soil program going over there for gardens and landscapes.
Question, what's the weather like in Castle Rock?
Right now, it's pouring. Hear the rain?
You can hear the rain in the greenhouse.
What zone are you?
8.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the new designation is zone 8. We're getting to look and feel more like Northern California all the time. But our cloudy days, our rainy days are there, but we do have some open drought periods during the summer to pay attention to. Some elevated temperatures, as the rest of the country has found too. So we're adjusting to that with plant selection as well as maintenance programs.
Okay, keep moving on. Do you reuse your dirt each year?
Only in the
No.
compost. Yeah. Nope. Start with sanitized soil every year. And our soil mix that was formulated for us, it's a mix that I've been working with since 1979. It's the base Cornell University peat-like mix, but of course it's been manipulated to have it be more water retention and that type of thing. But the main thing is that it's sanitary, it's sterilized, it's clean. It doesn't have any plant parts or anything in it.
What do you do with the waste? For example, labels. You're used 2- and 4-inch pots.
We stack them up in, if we can sanitize them and reuse them in a way, like if we're planting seeds for our gardens around the schools, we do. Otherwise, Nancy takes them down to Oregon to recycle.
There's a company in Oregon that was started with Oregon lottery monies that recycles nursery plastics. I just made a trip this week. Last week, I took a whole truckload of recycled poly from greenhouse cover. I took plant trays. I took broken up pots. They do not take tags anymore, so they do have to go into the garbage. But they've narrowed it down on what they will take, but they take the majority of what we're not able to reuse. So
and we reuse our trays.
We sanitize the
We
trays. and
sanitize the
reuse.
trays and reuse those.
All right, next question. How do you attend to the plant needs when school is not in session?
I come in on the weekends. No, if I can't come in on the weekend, then Nancy does, or another Bloom volunteer that knows the drill, knows how to water. But with that said, I do get paid extra days outside of my teaching contract to do maintenance on the greenhouses, water. But yeah, I'm here a lot.
We all
All
take a personal interest in this. We want to make sure it's successful.
We can tell. Do you have a problem with aphids on your petunias? And if so, how do you handle that?
That's a tricky question because we're at school. So we do preventative measures like I talked about. We really watch the weather. We watch our watering for preventative, but they'll come in. They do. So we have found, it's a soapy mixture, but
It's like safer soap. It's
Yeah.
It's
comes in a green bottle for us. I can, if you really want to know, I can get the exact stuff. Because really I cannot use pesticides if we have to. There's some extra measures and steps to do that. So we can use the bombs, but
just have to make sure there's no students and there's no contact until re-entry or well after.
and not all of our greenhouses can do that. So
Right.
because they have open parts.
Right. And one of the things we do, because we not only have, as you know, there can be an aphid problem with petunias and calibrachoas and things like that, but also the petunia budworm, which is one of those migrated insect pest problems that have come up from California over the last 20 years up into Southwest Washington. I've watched it as it's marched up May 5, so to speak. But the main thing is we can use a systemic just before they're hung, at what time there are no students in the greenhouse whatsoever. And I do it, or a certified public works person does it. And that's why nobody touches the baskets when they're loaded except Public Works. They also a repeat application of that systemic. It's called mainspring. It's a sprench, and so you don't get it on the flowers. You get it within the foundation of the roots, and it works its way up into the foliage. But the main thing is we will come back and retreat, weather permitting, in about the end of July, 1st of August. But knock on wood, by being able to maintain that particular program, we have not had petunia budworm on our city baskets, nor have we had aphids. And the Public Works watches them really close too. So if we end up with something that's out of the norm, then we treat individually.
Next question is, what do you use to sanitize the pots?
That picture, it was Fizan. We used that. We couldn't find it, so we found something else that was pretty close to it.
There's Nacasan and Fizan. They're both basically the same formulation. It's what they use to sanitize operating rooms in hospitals. So it's something that I've used in the greenhouses for years. In the old days, it used to be bleach and TSP, but now to have Fizan at our disposal is huge.
All right, let's go back to fertilization. Reminder, how often do you fertilize?
Fertilizer is in our water all the time. So whenever I water, or whoever waters, they're getting fertilized. So we just have either a Siphonex hooked up to a tub of it, or a dosatron connected to a big tub.
Yeah. What we'll do in the greenhouses is that the New Guinea impatiens for the plant sale, as well as the geraniums, you need to back off and do a clear water and then fertility. So it needs to be a clear water about every third. But the baskets in town are fertilized once a week with that 600 parts per million of the nature source. Watering every time of the baskets as they're growing. A lot of it's weather dependent. And if it's a really hot day and you're needing to touch them with water a couple of times a week, or in some cases when they're young, maybe a couple of times a day, then you just kind of back off with one and run some clear. But for the most part, they get fed quite liberally. They're hungry.
All right, so what is the approximate weight of the basket, wet and dry?
Yeah, wet there close to 100 pounds because there's 2.5 gallons of water in that reservoir with the wet soil and the plant material. And that's one of the things we tracked when we were trying to figure out what those lamppost brackets were going to tolerate in downtown Castle Rock. Dry, I mean, lift them probably half of that, maybe 50
Yeah.
pounds.
Okay,
Oh, the
and
whole
somewhat related then, what is the cost and size requirements for the poles that these baskets hang from? Any idea?
that would be a Dave question. If somebody wants to email me, I can pass that on to him.
Yeah.
Because he has every street renovation in Castle Rock now has lampposts with basket brackets. He's got 7 more lampposts planned for the extension down to the south end. That's the 14 basket, the extras. So that'd be a good Dave question, and we'd be more than happy to ask him on your behalf.
And a reminder that Julia and Nancy have provided their email addresses on your screen. So if we don't get to your question or you have more questions, please reach out to them. But let's keep going. How often do you need to prune the petunias during the season?
Never. Oh, I'm sorry. If you're talking growing on, that's
Growing. So we just trim them once. We trim them, well, oh, wait, take that back. Sorry. We trim them once when they're in the 606s. And then we trim them once when they're in the basket.
if they need.
If they need it. So if they're starting to look leggy, like spiders, we trim around the basket.
Just kind of even them out.
And then if they're in 606s, I tell the kids just ponytail cut. So they're, yeah.
Once they're hung by the city, they're never touched.
No.
And that's one of the questions that we get a lot is, how do you deadhead? How do you keep them trimmed? How do you get them to keep blooming? Proven winners, super petunias do not need to be deadheaded. They are a plant that will continue to push out blooms, vegetatively propagated. They do not have the necessity to make seed. And so, you look at them and you'll see the flagging of the dead underneath. But when you're looking at the wide drive-bys or the walk-bys, they're exactly what you see in those slides. So one of the nice things about having a quality plant material that will perform in a basket is you never have to touch them.
All right, couple questions on the Labor Saver baskets. And I did put in the chat section the link to the Labor Saver website, but can you explain the Labor Saver baskets? And the second question is, do you happen to know the cost?
Okay, the Labor Saver is an insert, which is a shallow, it holds actually just a little less than a 10-gallon pot, or maybe pretty close. Pretty fanatical about that. I like them to be full because anything that sinks below the rim too far, you've basically not given the plants that much more root system of soil to root into. So the insert has a webbed bottom, and the wicks are fit through little slits in that, and the wicks go down into the reservoir. So the reservoir itself, as I mentioned with the plug, holds 2.5 gallons of water to constantly feed and constantly water the basket. Wires, and they spin. Sometimes on windy days in the summertime, you'll come in and our baskets will have spun in the night, and there's a side that looks like it's not doing well, and you realize that it actually, where they were growing
moved
together against the
Yeah.
pole, they've actually spun around and exposed that. So the Public Works goes back and spins them back into place so that they look the best they can.
Great info. All right, let's talk about soil mix. Who do you purchase it from, and what is the makeup of your mix?
Did I take it?
We purchased, well, what are they now?
Pacific Fiber Products.
Pacific Fiber Products, the soil division.
Yeah. Pacific
Um,
Fiber Soils.
they're out of Oregon, well, Oregon/Washington. The soil's in Oregon.
It's a company that I have worked with since 1996. It's, as I mentioned earlier, that Peat Light Special, the Cornell University mix that we use at our nursery. It is a light mix. It's a sterile mix. I'm a proponent of it. We found the previous owners of what is now Pacific Fiber was the only company I found that would work with me to mix that according to our recipe. And so I've continued to work with them, as Julia mentioned, that when we were in need of a basket mix, I took them the components of what I wanted it to look like and told them that it needed to be able to retain. We trialed it. This mix held like 1.5 gallons more of moisture water within the structure of the soil itself. And so they worked with me closely to make sure that it was the mix that I want. It was the all season nursery mix. It was a Castle Rock Blooms mix. And now it's a Castle Rock FFA mix. And Pacific Fiber Product Soils has told me that they will not change that mix, that we will have that mix. Other nurseries can use it. They just need to check with me first. Sorry, but it is my custom mix.
That's right. All right, so let's talk money. There's a lot of questions on budget. What is the Public Works and Parks budget for Castle Rock, and how much is allocated to your hanging basket program?
Yeah, and that's another great Dave question, because Julia would be able to tell you that, you know, the prices of the soil and the fertilizer, the plants, the freight, and all of that stuff. But Dave's the one that puts the budget together for that, which I would also include Public Works labor, as well as the labor for the student hires in the summer. So we'll throw that one to Dave, and again, email me that question and I'll be sure to pass it on to Dave and get it back to you.
So I know there are a lot of people who did ask that question that are still hanging on. So please
Yes.
email Nancy, who will then refer the question on to Dave, who is
because he brings every October when they do the budget, he brings it up and he always asks, you know, are you going to grow more baskets? You're going to have less baskets? Never less. In fact, he always wants more.
He and the mayor won't let us do less.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Wow, I wish every community had a mayor that said, let's do more. That's awesome. All right,
we are good, and it's tied really quick. It's tied to the economic prosperity of Castle Rock, and that's why it's a good thing, because they realize the value.
Yeah, thank you. That's the quote of the day right there. All right, so let's keep moving. We do have just a handful more. Thanks for everybody for who's still hanging on with us. Would you be willing to share some of your favorite color recipes? If we maybe don't have time for that, they could email you, but if you've got something quickly in your brain you could throw out.
Yeah, we do. We do those documents, PDF, and we can also turn them into JPEGs. And about ready to put our 5 combinations for 2025 on the Facebook page for Blooms. Be more than happy to send those. I've got them for every year. So we have some favorites we learn every year.
All right, so I'll refer people who are asking those types of questions to email Nancy directly. All right, a few more questions. This is somebody who is blown away by what you're doing. They are just confirming you have a population of around 2,300 and you have 110 small businesses. What is the cost for a business license and chamber membership for both?
You ready to move to Castle Rock? I think the base Castle Rock chamber membership now is $99. Don't quote me on that, because I don't know for sure. But there's about, I think the last I heard, it was 110 registered businesses within the downtown east side, west side of Castle Rock.
All right, this question comes from British Columbia. We work with 120 volunteers. About 40 of them help with planting our pots. It is tricky sometimes because you can end up hovering over people to make sure they're doing things correctly or have to replant things altogether. Do you have any good scripts for teaching the volunteers how to plant things properly?
With the kids?
Yeah, I think the important thing is, so I'm going to relate this to my students, my high school students. I explain the why we're doing things. And then I stress, if you have any questions at all, clarifications, please ask. Don't be afraid to ask, because and I tell them this, if we do it wrong, somebody has to take time to fix it.
That's a good point.
Which is normally me in this instance. And then with my students, I just am bouncing. I'm bouncing and I don't necessarily say anything to them unless they're doing it wrong. And then I correct them and say, well, no, we need to transplant a little bit lower, like push that plug a little bit lower, because if we don't, that plug is out and going to dry out. The plant's going to dry out quicker and die possibly. So I try to explain the why behind things. but we just kind of, well, I just try to correct them
And we have,
softly,
yeah.
but then there's some I have to correct a little bit more. Nope, you're wrong.
with the
This
basket,
is how.
yeah, sorry, Julie.
No,
With
yeah.
the basket program, we have the opportunity of being in a closed house, if you will, where everybody is within the proximity of the staged area for planting the baskets. And we hope to have a lot of volunteers with experience that do that hovering, that kind of are there to help if they struggle with being able to get things planted properly. And then we have a quality control volunteer who will make sure that before they're placed onto the fabric, that they're the way they should be, with the tags all pulled out and put in the corner of the pot, et cetera, et cetera. Downtown, I'll talk about when we talk about planting the containers in the gardens downtown. And just that will be in October, I believe, Laura.
Yeah.
And so with that, it's kind of a separate program with more volunteers, which sounds like what your question is addressing. And there again, it becomes with having somebody who's a rookie team up with a veteran. And we can talk about that when we get together in October.
And one more, routines. Routine.
Yeah.
We are always the front right corner with tags. We are always this, and stick to it so that it's
Yeah.
easier for them to remember.
All right, we have one more question. We are struggling with the cost of watering the hanging baskets. It is done by private contractors and has us working into the early hours of the morning. We use Equinox desert planters with reservoirs, which saves us a day of watering. However, with 160 baskets, we are watering 7 hours a day every other day. The city wants us to reduce costs without reducing the number of baskets. Do you have recommendations for drought-tolerant plants that you have tried in hanging baskets?
One of the things with the Proven Winner Super Tunias is that they will give you a good cover with a minimal amount of baskets. Those 23-inch baskets only have maybe 9 or 10 plants in them. They don't have a dozen or more. I've talked to some communities that'll put up to 24 to 30 plants in a 23-inch basket. So this, depending on the size of your basket, you might be able to, using the right plant material, maybe use 4 to 6 plants, which will take more. Each one will develop a bigger root system and therefore take less watering. It could also be your soil mix, making sure that your soil mix will retain the maximum amount of moisture in between, even with the reservoir. And costs for watering, again, I can't really address what is happening there, other than the fact that the city pays for the watering of the summer for the city baskets in Castle Rock. But take a look at the plant material in your soil mix, and anything that has a water retention system is good.
And email with more
Yeah.
questions about that,
Great.
like specifics.
All right, so we have reached the end of our Q&A section. Thank you so much, Nancy and Julia. That was outstanding. Really appreciate your being with us today. We will have a recording of this webinar posted on the AIB website later today, and it will be on our AIB Facebook page. Nancy, as she mentioned, will be doing another webinar later this year that focuses on Castle Rock's container program. Today was about hanging baskets. The next one will be about their remarkable containers. So stay tuned for more information on that and other webinars we have scheduled this year. You can learn more about the webinars and other programs by visiting the America in Bloom website at americainbloom.org. All right, thank you to everyone for joining us from around the world. Thanks again to Nancy and Julia for a great presentation. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.